first.
Now let's talk about recycling, because nearly half of all food packaging used by major UK supermarkets can't be easily recycled. That's according to research by the consumer group Which. They looked at the own brand supermarket products and stuff you can put straight into your household recycling. Natalie Hitchens is from Which.
Packaging performs a vital role in protecting products and making fresh products last longer. However, across our research, we've seen multiple examples of packaging which is unnecessary, where there is too much, and also packaging that consumers just wouldn't know what to do with from the labelling. So there is still more supermarkets can do.
Well, the British Retail Consortium says its members are working hard to ensure that all plastic packaging is reusable and labelling is clearer. Gavin Ellis is a director at Hubbub, an environmental charity encouraging the public to get engaged on environmental issues. Good morning to you.
Morning.
What do you make of these figures? Nearly half can't be recycled.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose unfortunately they're not massively surprising. I think I completely agree with the Which conclusions, which are that the supermarkets and manufacturers do need to do more to reduce the unnecessary packaging, and where they do need to use it. And sometimes they do need to use it. I think that is important to note, but not always. But when they do use it, to make sure that it is recyclable and that it's properly labelled, because the public are quite confused on this. I think awareness of the whole issue of plastic is really high, but awareness of what to do about it is pretty low, because generally it's quite a confusing issue.
Yeah, well, just maybe enlighten us a little bit about this, Gavin, because there are stories on this about the black plastic is very difficult. It's those very thin plastic punnets that you get your fruit in as well. What is good plastic packaging, if there is such a thing, and what is bad?
Well, and this is part of the problem. It varies from council to council. What you can and can't recycle, but there are generally a few rules to it. So if it's plastic, it's bottle shaped and it's empty, you can almost certainly recycle it. Glass you can recycle, and cardboard and paper. I think when it gets a bit of a blurred line is things like the film and that kind of thing, which is difficult to recycle, and anything that's made of mixed materials. So if there's a combination of different materials, it gets really difficult to recycle. So then you're having to check your council website and that kind of thing, because at the moment it's not always very clear from looking at the packaging itself, as this report shows.
There is, as you say, I mean, there are some forms of packaging that you do need, aren't there? Because there is the argument that, if you're chucking out a lot of lettuces, for example, if you're chucking out your cucumbers because they've just kind of completely gone rotten because they've not been protected by the plastic sleeves, then that has a really bad environmental impact as well, because, the growing, the transporting, and then the disposal of it is also has a negative impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a bit of a balancing act between, you need some packaging on some items to make sure that they last longer, and as you said, the environmental impacts of that food going to waste is far greater than the environmental impact of the little bit of packaging itself. And I think this is where we need to be able to trust supermarkets more. I think this is where there needs to be more of a steer from government as well, so that we can trust that when something is packaging, it's packaged for the right reasons. At the moment, I think this report shows it. At the moment, I'm not sure that's the case. I'm not sure that trust is really there.
Can I just ask you, Gavin, if you're concerned, if you're someone who is concerned about whether something is going to be recyclable or not, do we put too much onto the supermarket sometimes? We always say, oh, come on, the supermarket's got to do more, etc., etc. Surely some of it's got to be down to personal responsibility, hasn't it? Seek out the foodstuffs that aren't going to have tons of stuff that you can't recycle.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what we do as an organisation at Hubbub, is it's about what we can do as individuals. And some of that is just, it's what you choose and what you buy in the first place. And actually the most environmentally sound thing you can do is to not buy any, something with packaging in the first place, to use reusable options, and that kind of thing is by far the best option. And then, but we, as I'm sure and I know this, it's difficult to do that for everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do have to buy packaging, and then it's about, there's a responsibility there from the manufacturers and the retailers to make it as easy as possible for the public to recycle, which, we think by and large the public want to do now. There's a massive level of awareness around this. But but it has to be made more simple.
Yeah, and we gave quite a lot of coverage, I think, didn't we, to when one of the major supermarkets introduced a system where you could take your own containers along, so take your own Tupperware and fill up your cereal or fill up, your dry goods, your rice or your pasta or whatever. But I mean, that kind of feels like something that not everyone is going to do. That's just a drop in the ocean, really.
Well, I think at the moment it might feel like that. I mean, all of those sort of trends and societal shifts start somewhere. So I wouldn't just write it off completely. At the same time, I think that doesn't always work for a lot of people with busy lives or going shopping with a big family and lots of kids. That might not be the most practical thing to do. But
Yeah, I think when I had my toddlers, the thought of going and individually filling up, rather than grabbing a packet of cereal from the shelves. But maybe we could just finish. If there are going to be people listening now who are going to go off and do the big shop at the supermarket today. If people still doing big shops, what little pieces of advice could you give just to kind of, because as you say, change happens very gradually, doesn't it? So what could we do to make our environmental impact less?
I think it's if when you're doing the shop, it's looking for alternatives. So looking for the loose fruit and veggies is the obvious example, or maybe there's things that you can buy from the meat and fish sort of deli counter rather than pre-packaged. So I think there's those kind of simple choices that you can make, and then avoid things that are sort of in mixed materials, and go for the things that are definitely recyclable. If you do need packaging, choose the ones that you can definitely recycle in your local council.
Really good. Thank you very much indeed, Gavin Ellis, director at Hubbub, which is an environmental charity, and it's 7:25.